The last time you felt hungry between meals, you probably checked the clock and waited for lunch or dinner. That feels completely normal, because most people today eat according to schedules rather than opportunity. Breakfast arrives in the morning, lunch appears around noon, and dinner follows in the evening. 3 meals a day seems so natural that many people assume humans have always eaten this way. But for almost all of human history, your ancestors rarely followed anything resembling a breakfast, lunch, and dinner routine. In fact, if you traveled back 10,000 years and asked a hunter-gatherer when lunch would be served, the question would make very little sense. Food arrived when someone found it, not because a clock said it was time to eat. Some mornings began with a successful gathering trip and an early meal around the campfire. Other days passed for hours without anyone eating much at all. A hunting party might leave before sunrise and return long after midday, with nothing to show for the effort. On another day, a successful hunt could provide enough food to feed dozens of people at once. The timing of meals depended on the natural world rather than a fixed schedule. Animals did not appear at predictable hours. Wild fruits did not ripen according to calendars. And food opportunities appeared unexpectedly, before disappearing just as quickly. Your ancestors lived in a world where eating was flexible, uncertain, and constantly changing. That sounds difficult from a modern perspective. Yet humans survived this way for hundreds of thousands of years. More surprisingly, our bodies may have been shaped by that lifestyle. The familiar routine of breakfast, lunch, and dinner is not ancient at all. It is actually one of the newest eating habits in human history. So if humans did not eat 3 meals a day, what exactly did they do instead? The answer reveals a very different relationship with food than most people experience today. For most people today, hunger is usually a matter of timing, rather than uncertainty. You know where your next meal is coming from, and roughly when you will eat it. A hunter-gatherer often knew neither. Imagine waking up before sunrise beside a fading campfire in a world without farms, supermarkets, or stored groceries. The food available today depends entirely on what people can find, gather, catch, or hunt. A small group might leave camp searching for edible roots, berries, nuts, or honey hidden across the landscape. Others might track animals for hours without any guarantee of success. Sometimes food was found quickly, while on other days people searched for hours without success. A gathering trip could provide enough calories to feed the group before midday. A hunting expedition could consume most of the day and return empty-handed. Because food opportunities varied constantly, meal schedules remained flexible. Eating happened when food became available, rather than when a clock announced it was time to eat. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have repeatedly observed this pattern. Many groups eat opportunistically, rather than according to rigid schedules. A person might snack while gathering food. Another might wait until the group returns to camp. Large meals often occurred after successful hunts or productive gathering trips. Smaller meals filled the gaps between those moments. This lifestyle required a different relationship with hunger. Instead of treating hunger as an emergency, people often viewed it as a normal part of daily life. Your ancestors were familiar with waiting, uncertainty, and periods when food was temporarily scarce. That does not mean they constantly starved. It means they lived with variability. Some days offered abundance, while other days provided very little food at all. The natural world determined the rhythm of eating, and that rhythm rarely matched the neat structure of breakfast, lunch, and dinner that many people follow today. In fact, the idea that everyone should eat at specific times each day would have seemed strange to most prehistoric humans. Their priority was not maintaining a schedule, but taking advantage of food opportunities whenever they appeared. That single difference may explain why ancient humans ate in a way that feels surprisingly unfamiliar to us today. The reason this lifestyle worked is that the human body was never designed for perfectly predictable meal schedules. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in environments where food availability constantly changed. A successful hunt could provide more food than a group could eat in a single sitting. Several unsuccessful days could provide much less. To survive these fluctuations, humans evolved an ability that changed everything: the ability to store energy. When food was abundant, the body stored excess calories for later use. When food became scarce, those reserves helped bridge the gap. In other words, your ancestors carried part of their food supply on their own bodies. This adaptation made irregular eating possible. Without it, hunter-gatherer life would have been far more dangerous. Imagine a hunting party finally bringing down a large animal after days of searching. The entire camp suddenly has access to a huge amount of food. Adults and children alike take advantage of the rare opportunity to eat well after a successful hunt. The next day may look completely different, because there is no guarantee another large animal will appear. This pattern is often described as feast and famine, not constant starvation, but alternating periods of abundance and scarcity. Many prehistoric communities likely experienced these cycles throughout the year. Different seasons brought different food opportunities. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter each created unique challenges. A landscape full of ripe berries might provide easy calories for weeks. A harsh winter could dramatically reduce available food sources. Humans learned to adapt to these changes rather than resist them. Flexibility became one of the species' greatest strengths. The people who survived were not always the strongest, but often the most adaptable. They knew when to eat, when to conserve energy, and when to move across the landscape. Most importantly, they understood that food opportunities never remained constant. That mindset shaped human behavior for far longer than agriculture, cities, or modern meal schedules ever have. And it helps explain why the ancient relationship with food looked so different from our own. Everything began to change when humans discovered a way to make food more predictable. That discovery was agriculture, allowing people to grow food instead of relying entirely on what they could find in the natural world. Instead of waiting for wild plants to appear, they planted crops near their homes. Instead of following migrating animals, many communities remained in one place. For the first time, food production became increasingly predictable. Predictable food changed almost everything. Villages grew larger, populations expanded, and food storage became increasingly important. People began saving food for future use rather than consuming it immediately. As communities became more organized, daily routines became more structured. Work, markets, and eventually meals all began following increasingly predictable schedules. Eating was no longer controlled entirely by nature. It became increasingly controlled by human schedules. Over thousands of years, this trend accelerated. Agricultural societies developed customs around specific meals. Different cultures created different traditions. Some emphasized large midday meals. Others preferred larger evening meals. But the general pattern remained similar. Food became tied to routines rather than opportunities. The Industrial Revolution pushed this process even further. Factory workers operated according to strict schedules. Schools operated according to strict schedules. Cities operated according to strict schedules. Meals adapted to those schedules. Breakfast before work, lunch during a break, and dinner after returning home gradually became the normal routine. The familiar pattern many people follow today emerged surprisingly late in human history. From an evolutionary perspective, it is practically brand new. Your ancestors spent far more time responding to food availability than watching the clock. Yet modern life often reverses that relationship completely. Today, many people eat because it is lunchtime, even when they are not especially hungry. Others ignore hunger because a scheduled meal is still hours away. The clock often determines eating behavior more than the environment does. For ancient humans, the opposite was true. Nature controlled the schedule, and that difference helps explain why prehistoric eating habits can feel so unfamiliar to modern people. The world that shaped human evolution was not organized around breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was organized around opportunity. And opportunity rarely arrived on time. The strange part is that many of the instincts ancient humans developed may still influence your behavior today. Your body does not know that supermarkets, food delivery services, and refrigerators full of food are waiting nearby. From an evolutionary perspective, those conditions appeared only moments ago. For hundreds of thousands of years, uncertainty was normal. Food arrived unpredictably, with some days providing abundance while others required patience. The human body evolved to handle both situations. That is one reason hunger can fluctuate dramatically from day to day. Some mornings you wake up hungry. Other mornings you barely think about food for hours. Your body is responding through systems shaped in a very different world. A world where meal timing constantly changed. A world where flexibility often mattered more than routine. This does not mean ancient eating habits were healthier. It does not mean modern eating habits are wrong. The point is something much more interesting. Many behaviors that feel natural today are actually cultural inventions. 3 meals a day is one of them. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner feel ancient because they have been part of our lives for so long. Yet for most of human history, those categories simply did not exist. Your ancestors followed opportunities, seasons, migrations, and the availability of food itself. The schedule changed constantly because nature changed constantly. When food appeared, people ate. And when food disappeared, they adapted. That flexibility helped humans survive in environments ranging from African grasslands to Arctic tundra. It helped small bands of hunter-gatherers spread across nearly every continent on Earth. And it shaped the species that eventually built farms, cities, and modern civilization. So the next time you sit down for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, Remember something. Those meals feel timeless, natural, and as though they have always existed. But for almost all of human history, humans lived by a completely different rhythm. A rhythm determined not by clocks, calendars, or work schedules. A rhythm determined by opportunity, uncertainty, and the natural world. Your ancestors rarely knew exactly when their next meal would arrive. Yet they survived long enough to pass that story on to you. And even though your world looks completely different today, the ancient human who once waited patiently for the next meal is still living inside your body. If you could travel back in time and spend a single day with a hunter-gatherer group, one thing would probably surprise you more than anything else. People were not constantly eating, carrying snacks everywhere, or planning their day around scheduled meal breaks. Most of the time, food was simply one part of a much larger survival system. Finding food mattered, but so did finding water, maintaining tools, watching for danger, and maintaining relationships within the group. A successful hunter, a successful gatherer, and a person who remembered where food could be found during difficult seasons were all valuable to the group. Knowledge often mattered as much as calories. That is one reason food was rarely treated as a purely individual resource. In many hunter-gatherer societies, food sharing became a critical survival strategy. A successful hunter might feed dozens of people. Tomorrow, someone else might provide the food. Sharing reduced risk, increased stability, and helped groups survive periods when food was difficult to obtain. The result was a system very different from modern eating habits. Today, most people eat food they personally purchased. Ancient humans often depended on food acquired by many different members of the group. Survival was collective. Success was collective. Even hunger was often collective. This changed the psychology of food. A missed meal was not automatically a crisis. People understood that conditions could improve tomorrow. They understood that abundance and scarcity often arrived in cycles. That perspective may have reduced some of the anxiety modern people feel around temporary hunger. Ancient humans were not constantly counting calories. They were responding to circumstances. Their focus was not meal timing. Their focus was survival. And survival depended on flexibility. That flexibility helped humans thrive in deserts, forests, mountains, grasslands, and frozen environments. No single eating schedule could work everywhere. Different environments demanded different strategies. Humans succeeded because they adapted. The story of 3 meals a day is really the story of predictability. Modern life offers a level of food security that would have seemed extraordinary to most of our ancestors. For the first time in history, many people know exactly what they will eat tomorrow. Many know what they will eat next week. Some know what they will eat next month. That level of certainty is historically unusual. For most humans who ever lived, food remained uncertain. Not constantly absent, not constantly scarce, simply uncertain. And that uncertainty shaped human behavior for hundreds of thousands of years. It shaped migration. It shaped cooperation. It shaped culture. It shaped the body you live in today. The next time you glance at the clock and realize lunch is only a few minutes away, remember how different life once was. Your ancestors did not wait for lunchtime. They waited for opportunity. And opportunity never followed a schedule.